Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. We're back with an old friend from PIVX, and that is Bryan. It's been coming up on 3 years since we last spoke, mate. And I was just saying in the pre-interview, you haven't had a haircut, but there's lots of other stuff that's happened as well. So welcome back to the show.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Alex. Pleasure.
And yeah, for those that don't know, PIVX is a privacy coin. They were really leading the way in terms of technology 3 years ago, and there's been some setbacks. There's been some good stuff happening again recently. Proof of stake is one of the big themes for this year, as well as privacy. So, hey, I wanted to get you on and talk about it all because I think it's one that's probably fallen off the radar for most people that are new, that have joined in the past 2 years. They might not have even heard of PIVX. But do you want to maybe give us the condensed version of what PIVX is, especially from back in the day, and then we'll get into all the new stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. So, hey to everybody that's new. If you're new to Nuggets News, or if you're old, awesome that you're here. Great long-term crypto solid guy. So you're with Alex. It's awesome. That's my promotion for Alex because he's a solid guy.
Cheers.
Yeah. So PIVX started it was announced in 2015, started in 2016. In January. It was a fair launch coin. So for people who are new to crypto, etc., you have multiple ways of launching a project. A lot of people know them, more recently through ICOs or minting a lot of coins and then doing distributions. Back in the day, quote unquote, 4 years ago, it's crazy to think about that, 5 years ago, you mined, right? So you started a coin, you say, hey, here's when we're going to start the coin. Anyone can start mining it. And you announced it, you had the Genesis block, and off you went. So PIVX was launched January of 2016 as a fair launched coin that was designed primarily to focus on privacy, right? We think about Bitcoin or Litecoin or Ethereum transactions, and it's all in a public ledger, which is beautiful, and it's got its setbacks, right, for reasons that we can drill into later. And so they really set off to say, hey, we want to pioneer in proof of stake privacy. And again, I mentioned we started as a mining, right? So proof of work, but the intention and what we are now is a proof of stake coin. So that switched over about 3 months into its life cycle as a proof of stake project, and it's been run in proof of stake ever since. So really, as a whole, we're in our latest iteration, we're actually sort of rebranding into a user data financial protection project. So we're really about financial protection, because privacy's got, it's got its own baggage. When you say privacy to people, it comes with baggage. People are like, oh, you're in dark markets and bad things. So we've kind of reframed it as we're really about user data protection and financial protection, right? The point is to maintain your right there, and how that's accomplished is through privacy protocols. And we'll dig into how PIVX has implemented those. But that's it. We're a community governed project. There is no CEO, there's no corporation, there's no boss. It is a decentralized autonomous organization, or a DAO. So it runs based on the community, right? Yep. So if you say, well, who runs marketing? Volunteers or people who have put in proposals to the blockchain and got voted in. So it's sort of as simple as that. It's kind of crazy to think about that you have a project that's been running for 5 years that has no official entity. It's volunteers and people that are passionate about the project. And it's grown over, the past 5 years into what it's become. So,
DAOs, again, a third theme there that I'm really passionate about, that I think is going to be big this year. So, at the time when that launched, for people and beginners, this wasn't like you've got to buy an ASIC computer or anything like that. This was anyone with even a laptop could mine back then.
You could, on a laptop, you could mine on a laptop. It didn't require a lot of hardware. So it was very, awesome. Very easy and accessible. The bar was low. And of course, now as proof of stake, you can run it on a Raspberry Pi, right? So you can, in essence, mine, but it's, staking on a Raspberry Pi. You can actually now stake, we'll talk about one of the features, offline. So you can keep your tokens in a ledger, on a treasure, offline secured, and still earn rewards. So you don't even actually need a device connected to the internet 24/7 to earn rewards. So
awesome. So let's I do want to dive into that tech, because it's, Ethereum and others are going down this path, but even they haven't got there yet. Like in Ethereum, you'll be punished if your node drops offline. So the ZK privacy technology, you guys are the first to have that on top of proof of stake as well. And we
Correct.
trying to do this back a little while ago. Like even when we spoke, was that sort of close, and then technical things happened, or what's the storyline there?
Yeah, so if we want to look at sort of the privacy evolution, right, or different phases through PIVX. Initially, it was sort of a coin join mixer, things that Dash had, back in the day, which is, I'll say, privacy light, right? It's basically taking things, putting them into a tumbler. It provides some obfuscation. It's not really privacy. And if look, even if you talk to anybody in Dash right now, they even say we're not private, right? We're not a privacy token. We're not a privacy project at all. So they've even distanced themselves from even that mantra. So, for many reasons. So we implemented, the developers implemented actually the zero coin protocol, which was a whole academic write-up around how to make Bitcoin transactions private. All right. And so it was designed for proof of work. It was designed for that algorithm, or consensus algorithm. And so the PIVX developers actually were the first to implement that zero coin protocol into a proof of stake project. And then we had private staking. So you could actually have your tokens completely anonymously staking. And then there was a vulnerability that was discovered, not in PIVX, in one of the libraries that a bunch of crypto projects were using. And it's called the lib0 library. So that vulnerability affected a bunch of crypto projects at the time. So all of them basically had to pivot and say, well, what do we do now? So at that time, PIVX put the brakes on that privacy protocol, pulled it so that those coins were safe, and then went through a period of time of allowing anybody in PIVX to basically remint or reclaim their PIV back into normal PIV, and then implement the next privacy protocol, which is zk-SNARK sapling. So that's a highly academic vetted privacy, obfuscation, and anonymity protocol developed by Electric Coin Company, and that's the group behind ZK.
Yes.
So great project, right? They have fantastic privacy. I mean, that's what Ethereum's looking at implementing, right? Ethereum's looking to go proof of stake and then, and then implement this. And so if you look, PIVX is proof of stake and has zk-SNARK sapling running successfully. So it's pretty awesome. I mean, I'm excited about it. It's been a long time coming. A lot of people in PIVX, have been waiting for privacy to come back, and it's here again. So we're really excited. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's just a little bit like it's amazing that, as you say, Ethereum is such a huge community and they're doing all this research, and people say, oh, some of this is unproven, and even people saying that proof of stake doesn't work, and there's no blockchains out there that have proven it can be secure at scale, and then people saying, oh, you can't do privacy and ZK technology, but somehow like this little decentralized community have got all this already, and so like
Correct.
do the Ethereum community or developers, do they reach out to you guys? Are they looking at this stuff?
We haven't had, to my knowledge, direct conversation with the Ethereum developers. They very well could be, the developers of PIVX could be. But yeah, it's the same, you think about it, right? Like if we want to take the example, when you have very large institutional corporations, I'm just using an example, right? Pivoting for those types of corporations is hard, right? It's like Titanic type of thing. When it's going, it's hard, right, to move it. When you're an agile community, right, that's not really restricted by a lot of, I'll say, bureaucratic elements, you can pivot and you can implement and you can really focus on it. So, the other side too is, the cost expenditure. I don't know what Ethereum's budget is. I don't know what Tezos's budget is in terms of their development staff, but yet PIVX developers have done, proof of stake zk-SNARK sapling for pennies on the dollar, basically, right?
Yeah.
And proven it. So it's, as I look at it, and we've had this conversation, it's people at the end of the day, right? Ethereum's got incredible developers. Tezos has got incredible developers. PIVX has incredible developers. But seeing what passionate people can do, right, even without, say, the financial backing, is really incredible. And that's a lot of the crypto community, right? You've got really passionate people that just dev and build things. Why? Because they believe in the cause.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it will be interesting. Yeah.
I'm going to just bring something up. I'll share my screen so you can see as well, because I don't know if you know about this or not, but this is Living Room of Satoshi. So this is like the website in Australia where you can pay any bills Have you seen this?
I have, yeah. I haven't seen it recently, but yep.
Yeah, and they've like PIVX was one of the first ones they had, and you can still pay all your bills and that with PIVX. And for those that don't know, the other thing that Brian and I joked about back in the day was getting PIVX to be the major sponsor for the Hobart Hurricanes, which I thought
Yeah.
was just going to be a perfect match for marketing and all that with the purple back in the day. But
Yep.
anyway, there you go. So, do you guys still do these community proposals, and like, have you funded anything
Yeah.
interesting, or what's going on there lately?
Yeah, so actually, and she hasn't been active this past 2 cycles. Megan Brown, she's actually a triathlete, pseudo professional triathlete in Australia, and we've been sponsoring her. So she's been a ton of races. Really, really awesome athlete, really awesome human being. So yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like we got connected. She was reaching out, like she had PIVX, or father had PIVX, and they were like, well, why? And I'm like, you're a triathlete. Why don't you put a proposal in to get sponsored? So she put a proposal in, and then boom, what do you know? She's racing and practicing with PIVX gear on. So yeah.
What'd
So
you say her name was? Megan Brown.
Megan Brown. Yeah.
Here
Yep.
we go. I've got a. I'll bring it up for people at home. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
PIVX. There you go. Awesome.
yeah. So if you think about it, we have, and just to explain, so every month there's an available amount of PIVX that can be created for treasury purposes, and that's 43,000 roughly PIVX. They aren't automatically produced. The way they get produced is that people, anybody, you, me, Megan, puts in a proposal and says, "Hi, here's who I am, here's what I'd like to do," and then they go into the PIVX community and they get votes for it, and the votes come from the people who run masternodes, right? So anybody can run a masternode. It's 10,000 PIV, and that allows you the ability to make a vote into this DAO. So if you get your proposal successfully voted on, then you can actually get PIVX for that proposal. So Megan did. She put proposals in, and she actually got PIV, every month, and then she used that to get, her custom racing gear and et cetera. So you can have proposals like that all the way to that's how the developers get paid, right? They put a proposal in, and if they don't do their work, then the community can say, nope, you're not doing your work. You're not getting paid, right? You're downvoted. So it covers the gamut. It covers, our developers. There's some business dev activities. There's a whole LATAM, so the Latin America community. They're doing a bunch of marketing and videos, and it's just people putting proposals in, and that's how the work, as it were, of PIVX gets done.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's just going to have a little bit of a resurgence. And I know like Dash was doing a lot of work in those countries. And then this whole privacy thing, you touched on this before, and exchanges started delisting coins, and then people pulled right back, and Dash is going, we're not a privacy coin. Zcash is an interesting one because that used to be kind of like optional, and now they're going for, I think, like everything is private, but they're still in favor, even with like Grayscale and that. So it's kind of like, who are your friends if you're going to get delisted and that kind of thing. So, I mean, have you guys had a tough time? I think on Binance you can still trade PIVX, but you can't deposit or something. So what's going on with all that?
Yeah, so we had there was actually an attack attempt on the network nearly 3 weeks ago. So there was a vulnerability that was discovered actually right around the super block, and the developers saw it 2 days before the super block was happening, put in stopgap measures, and then basically like the odds of this happening are really slim, but we know about it and we have stopgaps, and somebody actually attempted it during that super block. So because of like as you know with crypto, there's confirmations, right? So if you've got coins on an exchange, there's a confirmation time. We had basically 100 confirmations window to go to the exchanges and say, somebody's trying this attack, close down your wallets, here's the proper chain. And so we were able to do that successfully. So all the exchanges that's another thing about the DAO was beautiful, is just the reaction of the community reaching out to all the exchanges, telling them what's going on. So that attack was successfully mitigated. And so Binance basically at that point stopped, deposits, withdrawals, but everything's back open. They just announced, I think on Twitter, that we're all good to go. Our protocol update with Shield, the zk-SNARK sapling was approved by them. So it's all good. Yeah. So as you said, having friends helps with, obviously Getting into publications, knowing folks definitely helps. Exchanges definitely helps. Yeah, Zcash is sat in an interesting spot. Monero tends to take it's all privacy all the time, like really unabashed, which is a beautiful statement. We tend to sit more in I'll say family type of an orientation of most people don't realize how valuable their data is. And most people don't understand that their data is being manipulated and observed and sold and resold all the time. So for those who do know, there's responsibility to design protocols like PIVX that protect those transactions and the financial data, right, in an easy way. So that's why we've moved more to the financial protection or use a data protection moniker, because you say privacy to an exchange or privacy to a regulator, and they immediately are sort of programmed to think one way. But if you say, hey, we're here to protect users' data, right, like in the way GDPR might do it, or in the way that a bank preserves the data, or in theory, of their clients, that's what we do at a protocol level. So yeah, it's part of an education too with exchanges, because privacy carries baggage, right? But being able to talk to them and say, actually, by having these types of protocols in place, it actually protects your user base way better, and you as a financial service provider. So so it's great.
It's so funny. I think it was like even maybe 2 years ago now when I did a video called like the biggest headwind and the final boss is going to be this privacy battle, particularly once Bitcoin starts to implement these things, because it's all well and good for exchanges and regulators to say, hey, get rid of Monero and delist this and that. But at the same time, and we spoke about this in the Ethereum documentary with Paul Brody from Ernst & Young, because all these enterprise companies are using ZK privacy technologies on Ethereum. But regulators have almost got no idea about this. Like they're trying to stamp out privacy coins, and Ethereum is already kind of doing this, and businesses need to protect the data, as you say. But then you've got Bitcoin that's looking to implement a lot of these changes in the next big upgrades. They're all kind of privacy preserving things and efficiency things as well. But I just think that regulators aren't having these conversations at the moment about like how are they going to feel and sit when Ethereum is maybe it's default privacy, maybe Bitcoin has built-in privacy, and a lot of transactions start becoming private. So I think it's really important that, as you say, to get that education out.
Well, and that's where for us it is an education. It's a conversation around privacy does not mean you can't be compliant, right? Some protocols might make it impossible to be compliant with regulation, but what PIVX has implemented, right? Same thing with Zcash. We have the ability, if you want to send a shielded transaction, which means I can send it to you. Nobody else can see the amount. Nobody else can see the data. Only me, the sender, knows, and you, the recipient, knows. But even you receiving it, you won't see anything else about my history, right? You won't see any other data, just the amount. The beautiful thing is we have the ability to send an encrypted memo along with that side by side, right from the core wallet. So let's say you're a financial service provider. Well, I can send personal information, my name, even a snapshot of a passport or an ID, right along with that transaction. And that can satisfy that financial service provider, that exchange, any compliance or KYC or travel rule, regulation that they need to comply with in a single transaction, right? And so when you think about that, it's kind of like, well, banks do that right now. If I want to send a SWIFT or if I want to send some sort of money to somebody, I've got to prove my identity, and then it's encrypted till it gets to its recipient bank. Same thing, right? We just basically don't have a bank anymore. It's a protocol.
Yeah.
Right. So
I think you put it well before, where Monero is going down this like all or nothing, and that comes down to the underlying technology, because the whole point of zero knowledge, so zk-SNARKs, STARKs, there's all these different implementations now. The whole point is that you can prove that you know something or that you have satisfied the conditions without proving the information. Now I don't know if you've got any good analogies, but it's almost like going to the club and getting out your ID, and you can prove that you're 18, and the only way to get into the club is to prove that you're 18. But once you're in there, like people know that you've satisfied those conditions and whatever, but they don't know who you are and all your personal information. So I don't know if you've got another analogy, but that's the whole point of zero knowledge proofs, is that they have used this, it's a very elegant mathematics to prove that you know something without ever revealing kind of is what you know or that actual information.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great analogy, like, so using the club analogy, if you whip out your ID and show it to, the bouncer can see your name, they can see your address, your height, your hair color, all that. That's other data. All they need to know is, am I 18 or am I 21, right? That's it, yes, no. So with zero knowledge, or in essence, the same type of protection privacy protocol that PIVX has, that's it. It basically validates, yes, I am 18, or yes, I have this amount of coin. That's it. Nothing else. So in essence, I walk up to the bouncer and he just sees a yes, no above my head. That's it. And anybody else doesn't even get to see that, right? They don't even get to see if there's a yes, no. It's just me and that bouncer, which is, taking that back to me and you. That's why financial protection and data protection and privacy matter. Because think about it. If I'm running, look, let's use an example. Wall Street Bets, right? Wall Street Bets did beautiful analysis if you go all the way back on markets. So they were able to glean data out of publicly available knowledge about shorts going on, right? And then they were able to strategize around a way to capitalize on that. Well, if you think about what's going on in the blockchain sector, the amount of analysis on what's going on in Bitcoin or Litecoin or even Ethereum means people can start to capture data around a company or maybe a hedge fund or a nation state and go, oh, I can begin to identify vulnerability spots, or I can see that my competitor hedge fund over there is doing all these transactions on Bitcoin, right? And they're doing all these movements of funds, and now I can see how much funds they have in there, do that metadata, and I know if I short the market right now, they're going under. Like that type of stuff is now possible on a public ledger because the data is all there.
Yeah.
So if we think about that, that becomes very scary because it allows malicious actors or nation states to really begin to target, when if you had financial data protection, all of that data is preserved and private. So it's really, really important at that layer, because this isn't about like, oh, I'm doing something bad. This is about protecting attacks on you as a person, let alone as a family unit or a nation or a company. It's a smart, right? Like if I'm a company, I don't want to flash my whole financial record to my competitors because that's just dumb, right? You don't do that.
There's been a couple of good examples recently, and like we've got these projects that are coming up to index all the information, like the graph, for example, because there's so much out there that we need to start to organize this information that's all in these blockchains. But a few weeks or months ago, you see some of the best Ethereum funds, their addresses are known, and you can literally see during the dip who's buying more, and it's like, oh, this A16Z are buying more Wi-Fi and sushi. And when the best funds out there are buying more of these coins, like to me, that is just the biggest green flag that they think that it's obviously a great project. But people just aren't aware of this stuff, and that all that alpha that is going to be eroded in the next 12 to 24 months. Again, what you were talking about before with that privacy side of things, there's so many examples that I can just think of in my head about where this is going to be applicable with my pharmacy background. Just the healthcare database and how the doctors and pharmacists and hospitals, they're not connected, legally, privacy reasons. But once you have these style of protocols, you can have them all in the one database, centralized database, and then they have the ways to access it. The other way that I want people to think about it is the way that this works is, let's go back to that example of can you prove you're 18? It puts this information through an algorithm, and the algorithm will spit out like an answer, and the answer will only be correct. Like you only get the yes or no, I'm 18. If the input was like a year that you're born that was before a certain number. So it kind of puts information through an algorithm, it spits out an answer, and you can only get the right answer or a key that will unlock the door if the input was correct. So you don't even know what year I was born, you just know that I'm 18. So hopefully that's kind of more examples of how cool this technology is. And I think a while ago it was very expensive, and they've improved the math quite a bit, because it used to be like 1,000 times more expensive than a normal transaction, didn't it, to even do like a zk shielded transaction on some of these blockchains. And then zk-SNARKs have got a lot better.
Yeah, the memory. So that's the thing. Now I don't know where Zcash stands. I know for PIVX, the memory utilization for computation. Again, we've gotten it down to be on a Raspberry Pi, so you can run a full core wallet of PIVX, do shielded transactions from a Raspberry Pi. So the other nice thing about it is, I think Zcash has it, but we should be able to run these on mobile devices as well. So you'll be able to do shielded transactions, mobile to mobile, not necessarily have to run a core wallet on a desktop or laptop. So yeah, the cost of it is fractionally less. Let's put it that way. And it's faster. It's more robust, right? So in the old PIVX privacy protocol, you had to go through these more cumbersome. You had to mint. So you would have to basically create a token that was a privacy token, kind of like cashing in at a casino and you get a chip. Yeah. That took computational power and it took time. And you had to do that ahead of time before you would send a transaction. Now you can do it on the fly, right? Yep. So you can just say, yep, I'd like to send 543 PIV to Alex, shielded, done, click, there it is. Yep. So there's no pre-time in terms of, making a shielded transaction. It's just on the fly.
And you mentioned,
which is really nice.
You mentioned that encrypted messaging as well, which is, again, the service that like the banks are using and people are trying to solve that problem. So have you got any like partnerships or people using this, like specific businesses that are interested yet, or are you kind of still just building the tool set and then you'll put it out to the world?
Yeah, so we just launched, so Shield is what we're calling our privacy, that user data protection protocol. So Shield went active actually 3 days ago. So, which is, tremendous, went without any hiccups. So everyone's happy about that. So part of it now is just letting that run, get it smooth, seeing how the network and basically people respond to it, getting some feedback and data around that. And then the other thing too is we're going to be working on upgrading our masternode. So the tier 2 level or layer to our network, we're going to work on upgrading that. At the same time, we're going to be looking at doing shielded staking. Again, nobody's done that. So you'll be able to stake, shielded. And at that point, we'll be exploring a lot more sort of integration partnerships. There's a web development team and a sort of application development team as part of PIVX now that's building out some uses now that we have this technology live on mainnet. So they're building out some protocols and some applications around this. We've got some, as far as blockchain partnerships, Zenzo's a really good, we do alliances. So Zenzo, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they're actually, they're a PIVX fork, and we work hand in hand really closely with them. They're a gaming, really awesome gaming token, built their own forge. They have their own foundry. They just released their own game, Kota, so King of the Apocalypse. So, you've got, purchasable, you can buy things, you can mint things, great blockchain project. And then Sentinel. So I don't know if you've ever come across Sent. So Sentinel is a DVPN. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they're another, sort of in the privacy sector, but they have a whole decentralized VPN network that they've actually been rolling out. It's going to be on top of Cosmos. So really, really awesome. So total decentralized VPN network. So we'll be integrating to use PIVX and their platform as well. So we're basically hitting the ground running now that zk-SNARK sapling's integrated. We've got that in our proof of stake, and we'll be exploring in this next year some further integrations. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's most of the talking points that I had, mate. Is there anything else that you want to go over? I mean, like just privacy in general. I think the world, the whole like deplatforming, that narrative, it's just so great for blockchain, and people saying, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube deleting videos, whatever it is, like, Discord, Reddit, every single one of these big tech platforms, one by one, is just showing people that they don't care about the users or the data. And this is the call to action for people to start using privacy technologies, decentralized platforms, and so on. Yeah,
I think it's also, it's a I see PIVX as a bridge potentially, is still working with legacy systems, and I'll even say centralized exchanges. Not that they're legacy systems, but they kind of will be in a year or so. If you start to think about it, it's weird to think about it, but a centralized exchange will be a legacy system that fast. But they're still important for a lot of use cases, right? So being able to bridge there, educate about how PIVX as a protection, protocol, as a privacy coin can still work hand in hand with all of their regulations and compliances. But then also, having the ability to do atomic swaps, having the ability to be, part of decentralized exchanges is massive, right? So being able to span that, no matter where you are on the user spectrum, I think is really key. At least that's how we see adoption. But yeah, it really does. I think it's all of this past year in deplatforming, I think, is allowing people to wake up of, wow, if I don't maintain my own rights, right? If I don't maintain my own data, if I don't value that, then it can just be pulled at any moment. So there's almost a responsibility coming back to the individual to be, hey, I'm responsible for this. I'm responsible to be learning about what, platforms do or what they have control over or don't have control over. And that's getting more back to, I think, the crux of why we have cryptocurrencies in the first place, right? With, Satoshi's vision is a P2P electronic cash without the need for an intermediary, right? We're there. And I think people are also waking up that doesn't mean everyone gets my data, right? Yeah. Like, it means, no, my data is my data, and it's shared with whom it needs to be shared with for certain purposes. So
I think the ledger breach, that was probably a big wake-up call for a lot of people. These new privacy laws that they're proposing, like governments are just going to have this honeypot of information. It's going to get leaked sooner or later. And people that were like privacy conscious, like, when we think about them, people think about it, they're like preppers. They're like, oh, these people, they're, weirdos. They would buy a ledger because they don't want to type in all their information. But, those people that are laughing now that bought a ledger from a different way without giving away all their personal information. And one by one, this is going to happen with more and more businesses. And if you think about it, everything about you ever is out there in the realm, and it's digitally, so it's not going away, and that can be like a real sort of threat for everyone.
Yeah.
Anything to add? Final thoughts, mate?
No, I think you've been around crypto for a while. It's exciting. I think it's amazing how much even the landscape of cryptocurrencies has changed even in the past year. So I think for anyone who's listening, coming in, PIVX, as far as an older cryptocurrency, right, that sort of people have either thought it was just a joke or, it was just whatever, a pump and dump scam. It's another one that's been around for a while. Like, we're not going anywhere. We're building. We're community-centric tech nerds at heart. If you have questions, we're here to answer them. But I think in general, for anybody who's getting in and new, just ask questions, right? Find communities. That's why Nugget News is awesome, because you have a community. Ask questions, get comfortable, obviously validate, make sure you know who you're talking to, right? Because you don't want to trust your, email that comes in and says you need to send $5 because your rich prince in, South Africa has got $10 million for you. Like, use some common sense, ask questions, see where other people have gotten scammed, done well, etc., because that's an education pot. And I think that's one of the beautiful things we've learned through this past 5-10 years is we're willing to begin to ask more and more questions, right? We don't know everything. Ask more questions, be involved in community. This is a whole new frontier. We're still early. This is still early for the changing landscape. So get involved. Yeah.
Was back in the day, PIVX was before Zcash, wasn't it? So what was the privacy coins in 2015 when this?
Monero was Monero's been number one, right? In terms of, if you think privacy coins, it's Monero, right? Yeah. So Dash, back in the day was considered a privacy coin. If you go back to early articles, they branded from
Darkcoin, was it?
Darkcoin, yeah, right. So their whole point was around privacy or some pseudo amount of that obfuscation, and then they quickly retraced from that. So, Monero's been there. is probably, it's always been sort of the top in terms of thinking about privacy coins. So yeah, Zcash obviously has done a yeoman's job, I'll say, from the highly academic vetted caliber, right, of privacy protocols, of zero knowledge protocols. So again, as PIVX, when we were looking to what do we do as a small development core, do you either go out and try and build your own, which is really risky when you're a small, nimble group, or do you take technology that's proven to be working, just has never been done with proof of stake before? And that's what we elected to, right?
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, mate, we'll have to try and make it a bit sooner than 3 years before we catch up next time.
Because my hair's going to get way too long by that point. So.
We'll probably both have more kids again next time as well. But I just think it's fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing, like, if PIVX gets mentioned when Ethereum and these other projects start trying to do stuff that this little independent community's already done. So yeah, congrats on all that. You've been a big part of that PIVX community, so well done. And we'll talk again soon.
Awesome.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Yeah. Thanks, mate. Yep.